Welcome friends. Today I am going to speak about impact of globalization, industrialization on tribals. We human beings are social and relational beings. Human beings do not live in isolation but are well connected to one another through various social, economic, and political fabrics. They need fellow human beings at every sphere of life. Human beings cannot live in isolation. This network and connectedness makes human beings what they are. Once these human and social networks go beyond the social and political boundaries, state and national boundaries to international level, these networks become globalized, encompassing all human beings and social networks into its network. Thus, globalization is a very broad concept which encompasses all networks, including social, religious, ideological, market, and business networks. It cannot be bound in time frame nor can be defined clearly to the satisfaction of all. All human beings are either directly or indirectly affected by the process of globalization. Some impacts enhance the quality of human life, whereas other impacts become deterrents to the human life. Besides this, globalization process has become imperative in the world. No community and no nation today can stand alone and untouched. These are undercurrent processes of constant globalization which no community and nation can resist. On the other hand, globalization process has brought changes in knowledge system of the society pertaining to information and technology, education and training, economy and politics. If we see the definition given by Abdullah, it states that the key elements of globalization includes the knowledge of society, information and communication technologies, the market economy, trade liberalization, and changes in governance structure. There are two more concepts which go hand in hand with globalization, namely liberalization and privatization. These two terms are policies through which countries open up their territories for other international players and minimize government control over the process of markets. Therefore, globalization has minimized barriers among countries to foster economic competition, sound administrative and management practices, standardization of products, and labor forces across the globe. In this context, we see that our country, India, opened its doors for the world market during the era of 1990s when globalization touched Indian economy. We opened up our markets and we became a part and parcel of the globalized world. We will further see how this globalization has been having its impacts on people in general and tribals in particular. While we speak of certain important postulates, we would begin with globalization processes have both positive and negative impact on tribal communities. Some of the positive impacts are availability of better healthcare services in tribal area through government machinery, universal primary education with midday meal, better roads in tribal areas, better communication networks, cheap consumer goods in the market, etc. These outcomes help tribals to better their life. Tribals have gained confidence in life through education and better health. Many basic infrastructures were built to support the poor tribals, such as roads, communication systems, school buildings, etc. These are the list of positive things that has helped the tribal society with advent of globalization. When we say that world is a small global village because technologies can be transferred, human life and quality of healthcare and education can be improved, advanced Western knowledge and systems to better human life can reach to any part of the globe. But there has been some negative impacts as well. The negative impact of globalization is experienced not only by tribals but people of all communities. The government have been dictated by its forces to act sometimes not in the interest of the common man. However, tribals, being very vulnerable, are affected negatively in a greater degree than others. This is one of the reasons for studying impact of globalization on tribals to safeguard their rights and identities. Some of the negative impacts are now being discussed. For instance, tribals in general are low skilled and engaged in agriculture and they collect forest produces for their livelihood. The cutthroat competition of globalized market is slowly engulfing the traditional practices and making them resourceless in the process. Globalization process, due to its inherent privatization and liberalization postulates, is alienating and depriving tribals of their land, forest, and water resources. Natural resources are systematically taken away for mega dams, mining projects, wildlife sanctuaries, construction of various infrastructures. Tribals have based their cultural and social practices on these natural resources. Undue exploitation of natural resources due to globalization process has been damaging the environment and subsequently leading to global warming. It has enhanced transportation activities due to multiple and various fragmented production units. Today we have a network of such a wonderful transportation system that the industries can procure raw material from one place, have production at another site, have marketing branding at another place. This is possible due to globalization, due to connectivity. Corporates working in different countries can establish their offices, units across the planet and globe. We have evolved from a concept of road to 2 lane to 4 lane to 6 lane to 8 lane to metro to tube trains to bullet trains. Today, transfer of technology has undoubtedly made human life very smooth, comfortable, and easier. But this has got its own implications, which we have been discussing. If we see some of the theoretical foundations, Adam Smith, in his book Wealth of Nations, first termed the word globalization in 1776. In layman's language, globalization refers to a close interaction and contact among various people, institutions, and nations of the world. It envisages increased possibilities of mutual exchanges and understanding of people around the world, creating a civilization of linking one another. The process of globalization has impacts on everyone and every country of the world. It opens up new avenues for development and also brings along with it social and economic challenges and threats. Every aspect of life, be it social, political, cultural, and economic, has been having its own positive as well as negative impacts. Globalization can be loosely defined as free movement of various goods and services, financial and human resources, technological information across national boundaries. The Swedish journalist Thomas Larsen, in his book The Race to the Top, the real story of globalization, says that globalization is the process of shrinking of the world, the shortening of distances, and the closeness of things. It allows the increased interaction of any person on one part of the world to someone found on the other side of the world in order to benefit with somebody on the other side of the world. According to former chief economist at World Bank and Nobel laureate Joseph Stiglitz, globalization is the closer integration of countries and people of the world, which has been brought about by the enormous reduction of costs of transportation and communication and the breaking down of artificial barriers to the flows of goods, services, capital, knowledge, and people across borders. Anthony Giddens, in his book The Consequences of Modernity, defines globalization's sociological point of view, the intensification of social relations throughout the world, linking distant localities in such a way that local happenings are formed as a result of events that occur many miles away and vice versa. Similarly, if we see the work of Robert J. Samuelson, he states that globalization is a double edged sword, a powerful vehicle that raises economic growth, spreads new technology, and increases living standards in rich and poor countries alike, but also immensely controversial process that assaults national sovereignty, erodes local culture and tradition, and threatens economic and social stability. Therefore, it is ongoing and imperative process that affects all human beings and communities and institutions either to their advantage or disadvantages. No one can claim today that he or she is not touched by the process of globalization. We all must be remembering there were times when to communicate with one person from one city to another city, we used a 15 paise postcard, a 75 paise inland letter. We used to have the system of telegrams. Slowly, with coming in of more technologies due to globalization, transfer of technologies took place, pager systems came, mobiles were introduced, SMSs came up, and with advent of internet, we have WhatsApp. Today, communicating anyone from one part of the globe to another part is a very simple and easy process, be it through internets, webcams, Skype, WhatsApp calling. The facilities have increased, and today to talk to anyone sitting in any other country, it's just a matter of couple of seconds. So, this is how globalization is having its impact on human beings as social beings, and also what we discussed in the literature above, that one event which happens in one part of the world has got its impact in other parts. It is because of this globalization, the free flow of information and enabled communication has changed our life. The module that we are dealing today will also speak, as we have spoken in the introduction, about its impact on tribals. It is better to understand tribe and tribals in our Indian context. One of the most accepted facts is that tribals are the first settlers in the Indian subcontinent. They lived in isolation for centuries without much interaction with others, including the other tribal communities. There has been notification of these people as scheduled tribes. If we see, the local committee was the first one who identified the essential characteristics of a community to be notified as scheduled tribe. And these traits are indication of primitive traits, distinctive culture, shyness of contact with community at large, geographical isolation, backwardness, So, the essential characteristics of tribals indicate that they live in backwardness, isolation, illiteracy, and poverty, but they have rich cultural heritage and social institutions and social fabric. Today, tribals are not untouched by the process of globalization. Globalization has come to the tribals silently, which tribals did not know before. It brought a new orientation to the tribal society. It has affected tribals, including social, cultural, economic, and political life. Even social organizations of tribals have experienced significant changes due to the effect of globalization. Tribals depend on natural resources which are under siege, and this is affecting them more than other communities. In our Indian context, if we see the Panchayat extension to the Scheduled Areas Act 1996, which gives power of governance on natural resources to the tribal communities, it empowers the communities to administer the natural resources. But in this era of globalization, privatization, liberalization, we find that the tribal community is yet to achieve full potential to use the provisions of the Act for their own benefit. Globalization promotes monoculture, following the market economy which grossly invades in the multicultural tribal society. Each tribal community has cherished distinct cultural heritages for centuries together. This multicultural nature of the tribals is at stake. To narrow down and to focus upon the impacts of globalization on tribals, we see that the tribal community has been hit the hardest due to their socio cultural and economic status. They are voiceless communities and they by themselves are not able to fight the subtle but important forces of globalization. The tribal youth is being diverted from the culture and traditional livelihood systems. They, therefore, are easily getting carried away by the invisible market forces of globalization. This does not mean that others are not affected, but others are better equipped to face it by themselves. Tribals and their rights in India are safeguarded by the 5th and the 6th schedule of the Constitution. They are guiding policies which help the tribals regarding the use of resources like land, water, forests. The institutions with demands of globalization processes are gradually downplaying these safeguards, which are meant for the tribals to facilitate market economy. Indigenous people throughout the world sit on front lines of globalization's expansion. They occupy the last pristine places on earth where all resources are still abundant. Forests, minerals, water, and diversity of flora, fauna, all are ferociously sought by global corporations trying to push traditional societies off their lands. The governments have been going for massive liberalization and privatization processes to give way for globalization. It is signing agreement with international organizations to follow new global economic policies. This affects tribals negatively as their traditional rights over natural resources are at stake. Collection and use of minor forest products, rivers and water bodies being leased out to transnational corporations. Lands are required for having industries, for building up infrastructure, for meeting up the demands that rapidly expanding cities require. All this is having a negative impact on the tribals as they are getting impoverished. Tribals are still backward, poor, less literate, and each tribe has its own distinct culture. They are living away from others in close proximity with nature. They are not equipped with necessary skills to analyze the market devices of globalization. Thus, the impact of globalization is many folds on the tribal community. The tribal youth has already been into the clutches of processes of globalization. They are following the value system offered by the market, not knowing that they will end up nowhere. They are distancing themselves from their traditional value system. They are searching for a new identity between the tribal culture and market values. With this process of globalization, as discussed in this module, a concept of monoculture is evolving. We gradually find the tribal dialects, folks, they are dying out because there is the dominance of one or two language which is market driven. We see that the process of industrialization, globalization, liberalization, privatization has definitely benefited individuals, society, and nations, but we find the byproduct, that is the social cost which has come up in terms of loss of tribal identity, culture, language, rituals, and this loss that the country faces and the tribal community faces is irreversible. So we may become and we are becoming a global village, but at the cost of loss of a major portion and a segment of the society because they are getting marginalized in the due process. Thank you.